everybody, and welcome back to more political chatter. In this video, we will be talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s best case scenario in the 2024 election. Now, before I go any further, make note that this is not a prediction video. I have those separate videos for you to go ahead and watch. I personally, right now, don't think that Kennedy, in reality, as of now, would be able to carry a single state. But in his very best case scenario, which is what we will be looking at today, in his alternate universe where he does his possible best performance, he actually does win quite a few states. So, with that being said, let's get into this video. I'm sure many of you have heard about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the independent presidential candidate in 2024. He is the highest polling presidential or independent presidential candidate since Ross Perot in 1992. Kennedy, according to Real Clear Politics, is polling on average at an astonishing 15%. 15% for an independent is really tremendous and unexpected for someone like Kennedy. And, especially considering that he is only on the ballot in 8 states and that is growing week by week. So Kennedy is definitely someone that must be watched in 2024 and someone that really could win a few electoral votes here or there. So there, of course, has been an abundance of independent and third-party candidates in 2024, from Kennedy to Cornel West to Peter Sonsky of the American Solidarity Party to whoever the Libertarians put up, and of course Jill Stein running from the Green Party once again. So, and this is all due to the fact that there is such disapproval among the American people for the Biden-Trump rematch. This is the rematch that nobody really wants. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are some of the two most unpopular politicians in the United States, and they just happen to be the presidential candidates in 2024. So all of these third-party candidates are offering a very a wide option for people, to decide for someone other than Trump or Biden who they don't like. And that is why we have seen such a rise in third-party candidates in this 2024 election, particularly Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So with that being said, let's get into this video. So as always, we start with safe states. I really don't think that even in Kennedy's best case scenario, I really don't think that he could even win a single state by over a 15% margin. We have 4 characterizations, by the way, for states. That being safe, over 15%, likely a 5 to 15% margin, lean a 1 to 5% margin, and tilt a margin of less than 1% for the respective candidate. So I really don't feel that Kennedy could win any state over 15%. So looking at Donald Trump and Joe Biden, they obviously do. I mean, a state like Idaho that went to Trump by 30. Kennedy or Biden aren't doing that well there for it to get very close. So Idaho would stay safe. Wyoming would stay safe. North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska's 3rd district. Let's see, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, probably Missouri as well, West Virginia, and Mississippi, Alabama, and that would be it for Donald Trump as of now, I believe. And then as for Joe Biden, California is staying safe. I know a lot of people, lots of Kennedy support there, but at the end of the day, it is staying a safe state for the Democrats. Washington is staying safe. Hawaii is staying safe. D.C., Maryland, Delaware is staying safe, as well as New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Maine's first. I mean, these states are just too Democratic for Kennedy or Trump to chip in at Biden's level of support. So these would all be states that do remain in that safe column. Now moving on to likely states, I think that in his very, very, very best case scenario, Kennedy could win a likely state, not even a state, a district and that being Maine's 2nd congressional district. I think that he could win it by a likely margin, one electoral vote there. Maine and Nebraska split their electoral votes based on congressional districts. But Maine's second, if you go back to 1992, this was the closest Ross Perot came to winning an electoral vote. Clinton won it by only 4.4%, with Ross Perot coming in second place at 33%. It was 33 to 37. So, there is an abundance of independents here, more conservative leaning independents, very libertarian minded voters, which is exactly the voter bloc which Kennedy needs, which Kennedy is targeting in this election. So, in his best case scenario, I would say that Kennedy does win Maine's 2nd congressional district by a bit over 5%. Um, I don't think there would be any more likely states for Kennedy. I think that would definitely be a stretch. And then likely states for Donald Trump, there are a few where Kennedy would narrow the margin down to a likely margin. Montana being one of them, Kansas being another, Indiana being another, only went to him by 16.4 in 2020, just over that safe margin. Kansas was below the safe margin in the likely column. And then Indiana was just above 15% at 16.1. So Kennedy, if he does get enough of these conservative Republican votes, can get these states down to below a likely margin in his best case scenario. And then South Carolina honestly would stay likely in his best case scenario, but really Trump's margin would increase because especially in the South, Kennedy is taking a lot of black voters, but not from the Republicans. The Republicans never win black voters. He is taking them away from Joe Biden, and that will be extremely important in the 2024 election. Will be, how many black voters Kennedy does pull from Biden. So South Carolina would stay likely. And then you have, let's see, sorry, I'm trying to think here. Iowa really isn't getting any closer than a likely margin, went to Trump by 8, but polling is expecting Trump to do much better than that in 2024. Around a 15% margin polling is showing actually. Kennedy isn't going to have very much support in farm country. He's just really not. Maine's first is also not getting any closer than a likely margin, but Kennedy would be able to narrow it down to that. And then I would say that is it for the likely Kennedy states. Trump states. As for likely Biden states, Oregon, it did go to him to Biden by over 15% by 16.1 in 2020 to make it a safe state. However, I would argue that Kennedy could pull quite a few votes away from both Trump in the rural parts of Oregon, but as well as the area in Portland and around. We have a lot of libertarian-minded voters there, where Kennedy could actually get a significant portion of the vote. And then Illinois, again, black voters. Kennedy is really targeting the demographic of black voters, many around Chicago. And this could damage the Biden campaign, and in Kennedy's best case scenario, he would hurt Biden enough to make a likely margin. Moving on now, Connecticut and New Jersey are two very Democratic states that, are whatever. They're not really getting any closer than a likely margin. If anything, if they even do get to a likely margin. A state like New Mexico, a few libertarian voters, quite a few, I should say, but really that's all coming from Trump. So we do have kind of a reverse scenario than in the red states. So I would say that Biden actually might be able to expand his 10.8% win in 2020 in Kennedy's best case scenario, in that he would overperform and win it still by a likely margin. And then I believe that would be it for likely Democratic states. So that leaves us with quite a few lean or tilt states, 231 to be exact. Let's head over to Kennedy. He will have a few lean states. I do think that in his best case scenario, he would win a state like New Hampshire by a lean margin. New Hampshire's voters are very similar to that of Maine's second, more conservative leaning, but overall centrist and independent and libertarian, very pro freedom. That is the kind of campaign Kennedy is running. However, New Hampshire is a bit more partisan than Maine's second, as a whole, and they do lean Democratic. I mean, went to Biden by 7.4% in 2020, so it would be a challenge for him to win the state. Especially considering that still a lot of voters refuse to vote for independence because they believe it's a waste of a vote. Um, so that would be, very unlikely. But in his best case scenario, New Hampshire would definitely be a state that he wins um, by a lean margin. As for Joe Biden, I think that when you look at the numbers here, Maine second, the best Kennedy could do is actually come in second place in Maine overall. But considering that Maine's first congressional district is going to go safe, or I would argue that it could be likely, but still overall, Biden is going to uh, carry Maine's first district by a lot more than Kennedy does in the second district, thus resulting in Biden winning Maine at large overall by a pretty narrow margin. Moving on now. Again, with Kennedy, I could see a very real reality in, our actual universe, honestly, where Kennedy actually does win the state of Alaska, and that is because of ranked choice voting. Maine also has ranked choice voting. So, I mean, in a state like Alaska, the Democrats are going to rank Biden number one and then Kennedy number two. The Republicans are going to rank Trump number one and Kennedy number two. Some might even rank Kennedy number one. But then you have a very large independent population in the state of Alaska that will be voting Kennedy as their number one choice. So Arizona would actually be a state that he wins by a lean margin. As for Trump, I think that Kennedy can make the state of Ohio pretty close, and Kennedy is going to really damage Donald Trump's chances in 2024 because of Kennedy's performance in the Rust Belt. I mean, nowadays, Kennedy is the drain the swamp candidate. He is the outsider, anti establishment, populist candidate. Basically, the candidate that Trump was in 2016. Trump won the presidency in 2016 by winning Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The male blue collar workers, and these anti establishment blue collar workers in these states, that is how he won, by winning those types of voters. If Kennedy does have enough name recognition among blue collar workers, he will be stealing that voter block away from Trump in 2024. Ohio, a Rust Belt state, that will be very apparent. Same with Indiana. That's why he only wins Indiana by a likely margin. But Ohio only goes lean for Donald Trump. So in North Carolina, Kennedy actually does help Trump because Kennedy, in his best case scenario, pulls a ton of votes, a lot of uh, black voters away from the Democrats, away from Joe Biden. Considering that North Carolina went to Trump by 1.3 in 2020, Trump will be able to expand on his win here. Florida is interesting because this should be a state that Kennedy would do well in. However, the voters that Kennedy would steal from would be Biden voters because the vast majority of Kennedy voters in a state like Florida would be senior citizens, would be older voters because they remember that Kennedy name. They want to continue that Kennedy legacy, and many are unhappy with the Trump Biden rematch. And Florida has a huge retiree population. So that means that Kennedy would win a lot of these voters, and most of those voters do tend to be Democratic. Senior citizens are are typically Democratic voters, and as a result, Trump would only increase his win of 3.4 from 2020. And then we have a very similar situation in Georgia as we do in North Carolina. Biden barely won Georgia just by 0.2. It was just about even in 2020. and Kennedy would take a lot of black voters away from the Atlanta metro area, and that would diminish Biden's chances in Georgia, and this state would flip to Trump. Not really a state where Kennedy would have a chance to win. Kennedy could get the state of Texas down to a lean margin win for Trump. I could definitely see a reality where Kennedy pulls a lot of these, North Texas, very rural voters, more libertarian, more conservative, who honestly actually might be unhappy with Trump about his opposition to that border bill if they're up to date with all this news and stuff. So Kennedy could definitely narrow Trump's margin in the state of Texas to below a likely margin, went to him by 5.6 in 2020. Um, and then Utah. This is a state where Kennedy does have some sort of shot at winning, considering how close this polling is currently in the state. However, um, that being said, uh, Kennedy, it would be very tough for him to win, even in his best case scenario, just considering how many Republicans, how many partisan, never changing Republicans there are in this state. I don't see it in a reality where Trump could lose the state, but I could definitely see a reality where Kennedy comes in second over Biden and only loses it by a few points to Trump. Um, let's see now. And then, the rest of these states, Kennedy really doesn't have much shot, if any, a shot at winning. So all that matters really is Kennedy's effect on, who he steals from. Nebraska's second, considering that it is a Democratic district. Kennedy does steal more votes away from Biden, obviously, so that would narrow down to lean in Kennedy's best case scenario. And then in Minnesota, this one's interesting because we have this is another Rust Belt state with blue collar workers. But again, Kennedy does steal more votes away from Trump. Of these blue collar workers, they were being stolen from Trump by Kennedy, not Biden. They are not with the Democrats in 2024. They're with Trump, and Kennedy is stealing a lot of these blue collar workers, especially in a Rust Belt state like Minnesota. So Kennedy does pull away votes from the Twin Cities. So the margin states lean regardless, but it doesn't flip Republican. And again, in his very best case scenario, it would hurt Trump in the Rust Belt. So, while in the majority of the country, Kennedy hurts Biden, pulls more votes away from Biden than Trump, that's just the general consensus. I really would argue that that is not the case in the blue wall. I would think that in Kennedy's best case scenario, Michigan and Pennsylvania go lean for the Democrats. Um, I even could see, I could also see Wisconsin, the same thing happening. I would say, this is what I would say. I would say in Kennedy, if Kennedy is getting much more than expected in each of these states, 25% of the vote, it would really hurt Trump a lot more. A lot of the votes would be coming from Trump, and it would result in Biden winning these states by a lean margin. I completely forgot about Nebraska at large. That's 2 electoral votes safe for Donald Trump. Looking at Virginia, I forgot to characterize this earlier, but in coal country, there's such a stark difference between northern Virginia, very wealthy, well educated around Washington D.C., and the southwestern part of Virginia, where we have coal country, very rural, conservative voters, and that is where Kennedy is going to pull a lot of votes. And that actually reminds me well. And all of those votes come away from Donald Trump. Similarly, in the blue wall. So I would actually say that Kentucky and West Virginia would be likely states in Kennedy's best case scenario. They could be lean in Kennedy's best case. They could be lean. So we'll have a very similar result in Virginia, and that would actually help Biden in Virginia. I would say that it stays a likely Democratic state. Looking at Colorado now, best case Kennedy can do, we have very progressive voters here, but still regardless, libertarian, very pro marijuana legalization, especially regarding all drugs. They are very libertarian, and I think that there would be a lot of interest among Democrats here for RFK Jr., younger, independent Democrats, but it is very Democratic. Went to Biden by 13. So the best Kennedy can do is he could possibly come in second if he wins enough Trump voters as well in the rural areas, and narrowed it down to a lean margin. Now, Arizona, I don't really know who Kennedy would steal from more. Um, I think it would be just about equally split in a state like Arizona. I don't see any reason why Kennedy would pull more votes away from Biden than Trump, or Trump than Biden. So I would just go here with my current prediction, which is Biden winning by a tilt margin. I don't know what to do about this. That is my current prediction as of now. I think that Arizona, in reality, does go tilt Biden. I don't know how Kennedy would change the race in Arizona. Then we've got the state of Nevada. Um, Nevada, we have a lot of Latino voters. Kennedy has been trying to target them, and I don't know about specifically Nevada, but nationwide, Kennedy is winning a lot of Latino voters. I believe, he is in second among Latino voters. I think first in some polls among Latino voters, because they are really looking for an alternative, and he could do very well in the state of Nevada. I don't know about win it. This is one of the states that he is on the ballot in, however. So I would think that overall Latino voters would be, pretty equally split. It's looking like right now they are, according to polling between Trump and Biden. So also I would go with my current prediction, which is Trump wins Nevada by a lean margin. So in Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s very best case scenario, Joe Biden wins the presidency. A very interesting dynamic here, with Kennedy overall actually helping Biden, and that is because of what I was saying before with the blue wall. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania going to Biden because Kennedy takes blue collar votes away from Trump. So Kennedy wins with 277 electoral votes. Trump with 253, and Kennedy with 8. In his best case scenario, Kennedy carries Alaska, New Hampshire, and Maine's 2nd congressional district. I guess you could argue he could win Utah, Arizona, Colorado, and I don't know, to give you one more, Kentucky in his best case scenario. So thank you all for watching this video. Make sure you all go ahead and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Hope you all enjoyed. Leave a comment, leave a like, leave a subscription, and I will see you all later.